and basically it too much off the field shenanigans kind of made me fall out of love with coaching. Too much, you can't prove it, but in my eyes, match fixing. Too much interference from owners. You know, in China, we was getting phone calls from the boss, from the owner, saying you have to change a defender. We're 2-0 up away. You have to change a defender, and it's not really an option. So we change the defender, we lose 4-3. It's not a coincidence.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Across the Line. Today, we have Matt Ward. He might be familiar with some of the Philippine football public, as he was the assistant coach to Simon Enemy in his time at Meralco. He's currently now working in Chinese Taipei, and he's got some incredible stories of his time, both in Africa, in China, in Chinese Taipei, as well as his time in the Philippines. So please make sure that you like us on Facebook and on Instagram, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Across the Line with me, Chris Greatwich. Jingy is not with us today. He's disappeared. He doesn't fancy it in the rain. So it's just going to be me with my guest, who should be familiar with some of our Philippine football listeners. It is Matt Ward. Matt was previously the assistant coach at Loyola Meralco Sparks, and he joins us on the show today. How are you, Matt?
Hey, Chris, I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on. Absolute pleasure, and good to chat to you again. It's been a few years since I've been over there, so really looking forward to the chat. Brilliant.
You just want to find out really what you've been up to, because I know you've been very busy. You do a lot of stuff online, some brilliant stuff that you put out there on the internet. But what are you up to at the moment?
So after leaving the Philippines, I went over to China. I was coaching Division 1 in China for a while, then ended up in Ghana Division 1. So a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
And then from hanging around in China again, I had a couple of general manager roles for coaching companies. And now I've just literally returned back to Taiwan, back home now in Taipei. And I'm just cracking on with my, basically I run the British Football Coaches Network, where we're putting out opportunities for coaches across the world and in the UK. And just do a bit of consultancy and coach career development, stuff like this. So I've gone from kind of coaching now, stepped away to a bit of career development just to try and help other coaches improve and develop in areas where I needed help when I was trying to build a career for myself.
Yeah. Is that the reason why you've gone into that sort of space, Matt? Is it just purely because you found it difficult yourself trying to get your foot on the ladder, and you want to try to make it as easy as possible for some of the other guys coming through the network?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons. I mean, it all started because the first reason was I kind of fell out of love with coaching because of all the messing around you get, and I'm sure we'll touch on some of the stories in a bit. So there's a few reasons why I wanted to come out the game in a coaching kind of sense. And this has always been a passion of mine. I enjoy helping people, and it started off just with a few articles really, and then it's just grown into something now. We're coming up for just past 3 years, where we've got over 600 members. Lots of coaches have found opportunities in the UK and around the world, or even met other coaches where they got a job just by networking. So this is I didn't really imagine it was going to turn out like this, but now it's started growing, and it's all going well. Love it.
So do you want to just explain a little bit about the British Football Network and what it entails? Because my understanding of it, and I actually have a lot of people who are involved in the network, my understanding of it is people are obviously subscribed to the network, and then from there you are looking to either post up opportunities that you've come across globally, and then also try to help network to get people opportunities across the globe.
Yeah, that's basically it, mate, really, yeah. So people subscribe, they join, and what makes it quite unique to other kind of, if you want to say job sites or career websites, is that it's just unique for British, Irish or Northern Irish coaches. I mean, there's a lot of other websites out there which kind of let everyone in, and including agents, scam agents, fake profiles, etc. and it's just a bit of a nightmare. You end up getting job offers what aren't real, but they want to take money from a coach first. Now, if you're not really kind of switched on about that, you probably end up paying $200 or something to someone, and you don't get anything. So that's one thing I wanted to try and stop as well, and basically just put a face behind what I was trying to do. It creates a bit more trust and helps to build better relationships as well. So I'm on hand as well to give support and advice for members. Sometimes I have members give me a call or a message or an email, and they've either just been offered a job somewhere, let's say in Asia, and they've got issues with the contract, or they need some advice whether to take role A or role B, or they've been offered a job in Africa somewhere, but they've got their family or anything like this. So I'm basically now using the experiences and the barriers and the troubles I faced myself to try and advise and help others out.
Brilliant. I want to just explore how you ended up in the Philippines, because that's obviously how we came to know each other. You were coaching at Loyola Maracay Sparks when my brother was playing. Yeah. And I'm always intrigued to see how people end up in the Philippines, because no one ever really grows up if you're not from the Philippines. I have a connection for, I'd love to coach in the Philippines. It's never really on anyone's radar. So how did that all come about? I'm intrigued. I really don't know the story.
Yeah, great question to start, to be honest. And at the time, I was coaching for a club in Taipei. So Royal Blues Taipei, we started off kind of like in an unofficial second division, and we won that division. So we won a league title. I was head coach there. And I went on my B license in Australia.
Okay.
And I got talking to Maka, to Simon McMenemy, and basically he was on the lookout for an assistant coach. We got chatting. So I ended up getting the role basically while still on my B license. So qualified my B license on course, and I had a job to go to, which was just perfect.
Did you meet Simon on the course, Matt?
No.
Okay.
I was on there, but we just started chatting.
Right.
But it was great timing, because I'm a bit full on. If I focus on something and I start visualizing and I know where my next step is, I don't really let go of it. So right. I was all ready to move on. We've got in Taipei, the team had just got promoted through the playoffs into the top tier of the Taiwan Premier League. So it was really, we achieved so much there, and it was heartbreaking to leave them, because at the time, after 3 or 4 games, we was in the AFC Cup positions in the league, right? Which is, for our first season, almost like an amateur stroke semi-pro team, was amazing. So I left with a heavy heart, but I'd followed Philippine football and Philippines League when it was PFL for a few years now. Mm-hmm. So I was aware of the players, the teams, etc. And I always had in my mind, this is like a couple of years before, that it would be the perfect next step for me. Right. And I don't know what you think about visualization yourself, but if you believe in something strong enough and you work towards it, more often than not, it can possibly happen. And I ended up taking the offer from Maka and heading across.
What were your initial impressions of being here in the Philippines? How did you find it when you first arrived?
Well, the funny thing was, I did go across for a few days to try and meet Maka first, right? Before I was offered a job, just to check out the Philippines itself. Okay. And I must admit, even being in Asia and living in Taipei before, I got into Manila. And I was meant to go and meet him after a training session, but I just got completely lost. I was around Metro Manila for about 3 hours, missed the training session, hung around the pool, and then came home to Taipei, and I had to message Maka and say, "Sorry, mate, I got lost and I just missed it." Right. I literally got lost. Great start. Yeah, great start. So I thought, wow, that isn't really the best impression there. But at least I was honest. But I did. I went and watched the game, and I sent him across some match analysis and stuff. So my initial reaction when I got there again, at least I kind of knew what to expect or be ready for. A bit of craziness with the traffic. It's a lot different to Taipei, but I enjoyed it. I loved it, and when I got there, excited to get stuck in. At the time there's a few internal politics, which I'm sure you get at all clubs, and in fact, I ended up just going across kind of on my own free will because it was taking so long to organise everything. Now, no fault of Macca's because he wanted me across. It was agreed, but there was some other internal stuff going on. So I ended up getting my own flight and hotel and just turning up, basically, just rocking up.
Right.
So I couldn't wait around. I'd already quit my job and left my old club because it was agreed. And then it was being stalled. So I said, no, I'm already here now. That's it. So I get there and straight away, you know, the difference from me in the quality of player is different to what I'm used to. I was head coach for 3 years, but with at the most semi-professional players,
Right.
Playing in a league with probably 2 teams who are professional and could hold their own in the Philippines league, I would say. So the step up from kind of that level, and then you go into a team. Morocco at the team had past and present national team players.
Yeah.
You know, there's Jay De Jong, there was your brother, there was Taj Minikun, who's won the AFC Champions League. Then you got James and Phil Younghusband. We had a guy from Osasuna reserves or something, Alvaro. And I'm like, bloody hell, you know, it's a big step from kind of being in charge and thinking you know everything to all of a sudden you're quite intimidated.
Right.
And yeah, it was a big step, a big eye opener. But everyone was friendly, everyone was welcoming. It was good to get stuck into it all.
Well, Jing Hamlang has showed up. Brilliant to have you on.
How's it going, guys?
Sir. How are you, sir?
Doing all right. How's it going?
Little afternoon nap, was it?
No. I had some internet issues.
Internet issues. Okay. Well, Coach Matt has already said he remembers and recounts some fond discussions that he had with you before. So good for you two to reconnect.
Yeah, for sure.
We've just been covering his first initial introduction to the Philippines, so that's kind of where we're at the moment, Jing. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Matt, was just to give people an idea who perhaps aren't familiar with the Philippine football scene. Is what sort of level would you compare it to, let's say, back home in England? Like the players that you were coaching at Morocco, like what level do you think that would be back home in the UK?
Yeah, I know it's a great question. What I always think, even in China, I was thinking the same. And you always want to compare. Yeah. And you know what? In my opinion, it's really difficult because the lower leagues in England and the non-league kind of pyramid is strong. You can have players. Well, you know, with respect, like yourself as well. You got players who are doing quite well in the UK. You can go over and you have a international career, very successful. I guess what you would have to do is kind of play a 2-legger. You need to play in England and then go across to play in the Philippines because it'll be totally different. I mean, the heat, conditions of the pitch, just the atmosphere. You know, maybe some of the lads from the UK go out on the booze the night before because they're too excited. You don't know, but look, I reckon if you brought over probably I don't know if I'm going to get any stick for this, but conference north, conference north, conference south area.
Yeah.
I would say both teams would hold their own, and you could take players from Philippines teams, the best teams, into that kind of area, and vice versa.
I would agree with that.
When I was saying the players before. Yeah. When I was saying about the players before, I forgot to mention a few really good, talented young ones. Like we had Giral and Kurt Dizon, and you know, good lads. But then after a few years, if you took them out like any player or most players in Asia and asked them to go and play in Europe or the UK, there's a lot of adaptation needed to be made again. You know, things may have been stepped off a little bit in the Philippines. So, yeah, there would need to be a transition. But yeah, I'm glad you kind of agree because I reckon that it's a tough question.
I think it's also when you conversely, you look at it the other way around. Like you mentioned Taj Minikon there, for example. I'll tell you a story. We met with a guy called Jacob Burns, who used to play for Leeds. And he brought over Perth Glory. And they did a pre-season tour here. And anyway, long story short, he ended up coming to one of our academy sessions, and he looked over and he said, "Oh, is that Matt Acton over there, the goalkeeper?" I said, "Yeah, he's the goalkeeper for us." And he said, "Wow, like he was, he was quite a highly rated youngster coming through the Australian ranks." I said, "Yeah, we've got a few Aussies, we've got him, we've got Taj Minicon's here." And he said, "Taj Minicon is here in the Philippines." Said, yeah, he was like, "Wow, like Taj was like one of the poster boys for Australian youth football growing up." And he was quite surprised that he was playing, with all due respect, at the level of the Philippines. But what also I think people need to understand with that is the fact that, with all due respect to Taj was a good player, but he wasn't like he blew up the league. He wasn't, it wasn't like he was he wasn't the top scorer in the league. He wasn't MVP of the league. He was a good player in the league, but he wasn't absolute superstar standout. You know what I mean? He probably wasn't even the best player on that Morocco team, to be fair to him. So like that sort of feeds into what you were saying there about players that, if we went to the UK, we would probably struggle on a November, December, muddy, boggy, windy field.
For sure.
In the Conference South, where the game would be extremely physical and the intensity perhaps wouldn't be what it would be here. But, from set pieces, from crosses, all these types of things would play into the hands of a UK club. Conversely, if you brought them over here in the height of summer, playing in 100-degree heat on a turf field where Filipino players are very dynamic, we train full time, so the fitness levels there, the sharpness is there. I think also that would be quite hard to compete with. So, it's definitely not apples to apples. I would agree with that, and I think that's something that a lot of players and maybe coaches as well kind of struggle to differentiate between those factors, because it's completely different. It's completely different. I would say, like you said, if we had a series of 10 games against each other, 5 home, 5 and away, I'd imagine it would be somewhere about that. It'd be kind of even between the two levels. So I would say
it'll be interesting. I would like to see that. I'd like to see that for sure.
Maybe that's something for another day. Maybe that's another business model for you. We'll organise some tours and we'll get some British teams.
No, you got to. And one player who needs to be playing. Yeah, for sure. And one player who would need to play, Eddie Malari. I would need to see Eddie running up at fullback, up and down. And the British lads would be like, what's happening here? 100-degree heat. Eddie's running up and down.
He's definitely not running now, mate, by the way. He definitely can't move now. Maybe Jing can attest to that one.
He's a little larger. He's a little larger than what you remember, Matt.
But no, I mean, I totally agree with that, and I think that's quite an interesting perspective that you have with that, because obviously you've been and coached in different countries, and you've seen the different levels and the different, I guess, sort of physicality, different problems, different issues that you might encounter. I mean, what are some of the things that you encountered here that are similar problems that you might experience in, say, in a Taiwan, in a China? Are there any sort of things that are quite similar in terms of problems that you might encounter when you come to Asia to coach?
Yeah, I reckon player-wise, communication-wise, obviously not a big issue, because there's a lot of English-speaking players in the Philippines, right. A lot of mixed heritage. That makes a whole of a lot of difference. Also, in China Division 1, I was with an ex-Chinese Super League team that just got relegated. We had
which team was that, Matt?
3 foreign players. Shanghai Shenzhen. So basically, when we left, or basically when I lost my job on Twitter, they ended up getting relegated last season. Basically, the owner pulled out all the money in the club because he's got housing in the States and whatnot, and housing production companies. So he pulled out all the money and they got relegated. But an ex-Chinese Super League team, we had a Brazilian who was at Sao Paulo. He played under Sven Eriksson for a few seasons. We had the second best under 21 Brazilian of 2016. I think he came second behind Firmino or someone like this. And the level was top notch. Top notch. But with the locals, their footballing knowledge is not as deep as the players in the Philippines, where you can actually sit. You got, for your brother, for example, you stand with him and you're talking about tactics for a couple of hours. And the depth of the knowledge, the tactical knowledge is huge when you've got all the experienced players there. You've got a lot of experienced players, past national team players as well. Whereas the Chinese are used to being kind of directed and told what to do. There's no discovery. There's a lack of decision making. Right. In China, we had maybe 2 or 3 guys what had played in the Portuguese league, and they would come up to you and they would question you. But, in training, apart from the captain and a few of us through the translator, they would rarely kind of not pull you up, but kind of question what you were saying or have any input. Whereas you know yourself, Chris, as a player and a coach, when you got that mix in the Philippines, you got a lot of experience in club and national team. You got a lot of good players, and if something's not right, they'll express it. They'll say it's a proper environment. So yes, I know there's probably a lot of negatives about the Philippines League, more so the structure and organisation. But when teams are trying to be as professional as possible, you can really get a good professional setup. I know you did your best to manage a tight ship when you was at Kaya, and we did the same at Meralco, Ceres. Global, I know, a bit unfortunate, but the top teams can be comparable. It's probably sometimes just I'm going to say local players, but I mean the ones who have just primarily played and stayed in the Philippines. Right. Where when you compare them to a Chinese player, China's got better resources, a bigger talent pool, so it can't be compared 1-to-1. Right. But team-wise, understanding tactics and having their own decision-making process, the Philippine teams and players can compete in that respect.
That's quite interesting, isn't it, Jing? Because we often talk about sort of the discrepancies that we have here in the Philippines versus other countries, and it's quite refreshing to hear Matt, someone who's removed from the system now. He has no agenda or prejudice. To hear him say that he thinks that perhaps the tactical understanding of players in the Philippines was quite high compared to some of the other perhaps more traditional nations that you would assume have an elevated level, where it potentially isn't the case.
The thing that really stood out to me there in that last
absolutely. And sorry, Jing, go on.
Yeah. The thing that I just wanted to say was that you mentioned that the local players, the ones that stayed here in the Philippines, perhaps don't have the same tactical base of knowledge that other players might have. You have the likes of Phil Young-Husband, as you mentioned, and those that have been exposed abroad. But there are a lot of homegrown individuals, let's say like a Marco Casambre or Amani Aguinaldo, who's had the opportunity to go abroad, and when they come back, their knowledge of the game is a lot more broad than when it was before they.
Hello?
Yeah, for sure. You're right there, Jing, and that would come down to basically the club or the environment where they went abroad. Now, if they went to another, let's say, like a China or a Cambodia or a Myanmar or a Malaysia or Singapore, you could have a coach, for example, a South Korean coach, which is just used to directing you, dictating to you. And you've got players around you who don't speak English and who are just used to being told what to do, kind of in an autocratic environment. So these players would not then return with any value, really, because they've just been told where to run, when to run. But if they can go to a country, or even in a country under a good coach, it makes a huge difference. In China, we took over, 3 British coaches took over a team of South Korean staff, and we took over a big mess. And we took over players what couldn't think on their own, couldn't choose when to carry the ball or when to pass, didn't know when to shoot in the final third, no decision making. So I think what you said there, Jing, the local lads, homegrown Filipino players, which could then go out and experience something under a good coach or around better players who can decision make or who are actually just good general people. They can certainly bring back something positive. But it's also how receptive they are as well. I don't know if he's still playing or not, but used to play for Meralco. Little, is it Nano? Small guy, Nano.
He's with Kaya now.
Technically
I coached him
brilliant. As well. Is he still playing, is he?
Yeah, he's at Kaya.
Oh, really?
I had him, yeah. I ended up signing him, actually, Matt. Yeah.
You've got a guy like that. Great Oh, brilliant. Great football mind, and if you're talking to him and ask him or give him an option to do something, he knows, he's switched on. And not only in the brain, of course, there's a few points what you could kind of polish up, but not only in the brain, but he's just fast as anything. Yeah, just amazing. So there is so much talent in the Philippines, or potential, if they kind of got molded the right way. And I guess this comes down to the links between the high schools and when they can play for the pro teams or not. I know there used to be an issue with this, and the high school teams are on TV, the pro games aren't, and there just needs to be a better bridge in between the two levels, because there really is a lot of talent what could continue to be developed and progressed. But you need people there, Chris, like yourself, who want to be doing it, who want to put in the hours of the dirty work, not just want to be the face or say, oh, look, I'm part of the PFF, just to be popular, just to have power, and to think that it's going to get you some financial gain. You need true football people what care about the development of the country. Otherwise, it won't work.
No, we've waxed lyrical about that exact point on the show, Matt. It's something that it's refreshing again to hear someone with a different perspective on things, because you're not as engrossed in it as myself or even other people who've come up through the system. So it's interesting to see people have that perspective with a completely, you're completely objective. There's no agenda or whatsoever with your opinion. So no, it is a real shame. It's a real shame that it isn't harnessed in that way, because someone like Nano, who you mentioned, I mean, he's someone who easily should be playing a top Southeast Asian club, for example. Like, he's someone who I would see maybe going to Thailand and being a really, really, really good player in that league. I mean, maybe he might find the physical deficiencies would reach a certain point because he is so small. When we talk about small in England, I'm small in England. But he's small, he's just above 5 foot, you know what I mean? But technically, tactically, he's sharp as anything. I think with had he been nurtured in the correct way, perhaps not had to go so long through the collegiate system, he's someone who could have had a more upward trajectory on his career path. So, yeah, I mean, he's still hoping he can still fulfill it. But no, it's really interesting that you say that, because that's something that we've talked about at length on this show. With that also, what I'm quite interested with you is, because you haven't been exclusively in Asia. You went to Ghana, for example, and worked over there. I even heard your cameo on the BBC interview that you did when you were talking about that. I mean, how was that as an experience, and how did it contrast to perhaps some of the things you'd experienced in Asia?
Yeah, great questions, Chris. I mean, so Morocco was the next stepping stone for me. And one big thing I learned, especially from Macca, was, Asia, you're going to have interference. You can only control the controllables. You're going to get things what you can't control. And if you let it get to you, you're going to suffer. And there's a few things which got to me. I'll just name one again. This may not be popular because I know there's question, but when I stepped off for playing the first training session, I go to Morocco. They've been doing a pre-season for about 2.5, 3 months. Fitness training, weight training and stuff. Can't play football. They're not football ready. They can run a 100-meter sprint, powerful, but, not football ready. And it took a while. All the cup games, I think we played the cup. I think you guys beat us in the cup. And it took us all the cup matches to actually get going. So the cup was like the pre-season, because the pre-season training was incorrect. But now, no fault of Macca. It was the interference from outside, where the football job should be left to the head coach, and everything else, admin, logistics, should be with the people who deal with that. And when you start getting that crossover, just because someone's got more power, arms, and our players are fit, not football ready. In fact, if they want to run straight line, 100-meter sprint, brilliant. We would win the Olympics at 100 meters in the Philippines. So, you know, I learned a lot of things. I made mistakes as well. You know, I'm very honest and I always admit my mistakes. Going in as assistant, I got too close to the players. Whereas now I know from being an assistant in China as well, assistant is there in between the players and the head coach as a filter. But in the Philippines, it was easy because, you know, a bunch of good lads. Mm-hmm. I'm younger, you know, a little bit lonely. And I didn't always have Macca's back how I should have or how I would now if I went in as an assistant coach again.
Right.
And so I learned a lot from there, especially for when I moved to China, because, you know, again, talking about a step up from Taipei to the Philippines, this was a huge step up. You go there, we got a huge training ground, we got a hotel room like a Sheraton, your own one ensuite in the training ground, training pitches. You fly into matches, 4 or 5 hours away in the same country. Right. You got 3 meals a day at the training ground, your own chefs. It's a proper step up. So for one, I knew I had to kind of wind my neck in a little bit and you know, be observant and go differently about my opinions, more professionally, I would say. So I had to grow up right. in a short space of time. And if anything, I went from being a confident head coach in Taipei, where basically I had the rule of everything, and I thought I had all the answers, to not being as confident in the Philippines and then losing my confidence as a coach in China, just for the pure fact that I didn't believe that the Chinese staff and owners believed in me as an assistant. So the head coach, of course, they've got the backing already, but there's so much backstabbing and so much things being said behind closed doors. People want your job. Even the Chinese staff, what you pushed out of place coming in, want your job. And that makes me uneasy. If I feel like I haven't got the backing, I don't feel confidence. So I learned a huge amount. I was working with 2 pro licensed coaches, British coaches in China. I learned so much. I learned more than I did on my A license course, just from pure experience. And that set me up for Ghana perfectly. I went in as head coach in Ghana and I was happy. I was left to do everything I needed. My experiences in China and the Philippines had given me the ideas of how to manage up as well as manage down. Mm. And unfortunately, it came to a sour ending because I found out a few things which maybe I shouldn't have found out. But my time there, coach and develop players, was amazing. Just the togetherness. You're not really meant to win away games because of match fixing, just like many other countries, not just African countries. Mm-hmm. And we went on to break the away winning record. We were unbeaten for 4 matches in away matches, which is unheard of. And, you know, if I was able to stay there, it's an easy place to grow your reputation as a foreign coach if you do well. So that's why when coaches say to me now, where would you go? Asia. Well, everyone wants to go to Asia. You're in the Philippines, you've got a swimming pool, the sun's out, of course. But no, professionally, for your career to progress, Africa, the continent of Africa would be great because you're allowed to get on with your job, well, as much as possible. But you can really get down and get to grips and get some hard work done with the players as well. Great experience.
Yeah. And what? So judging by what you're saying there, it's just the case of you had a level of autonomy and responsibility that enabled you to conduct your work versus what you've experienced in Asia. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely correct. So even though, you know, the chairman, we got on well, although it didn't end well, but he said, Matt, you know, you're in control. You're the manager. You know, you tell us when you want to set off on the bus for an away match. You tell us what you want to do, what you need preparing for a recovery day. You talk with the logistics, the team manager, but you're in charge of selecting the team. They did, of course, like everyone, make suggestions. You got like a team of 10 staff being busy having their secret meetings. Oh, Matt's just come in, he doesn't know the league. But what they don't know, on the way to Ghana, 18 hours, I already know the players. I know the opposition. I know the players I'm going to be against. I know who I'm going to drop already. I'm already up to date. But of course, you need to take the local knowledge. You would be naive not to. But they let me get on with it. And I remember the first match, big pressure because I was against it was at home, huge crowd. They put out extra chairs and everything. And the coach I was facing was the ex-coach of a team I just took over. Okay. So he knew how we play. He knew all the players. I'm thinking, oh no, this is going to be tough. Anyway, first half comes. We're hitting the post. We're hitting the bar 3 or 4 times. Could have had 3 or 4 penalties. I'm thinking we're going to win this 3 or 4-0. We go in at half time 0-0, and everyone's feeling like we've just lost 5-0 at half time. It's 0-0 still. I said, lads, come on. I said, hey, we're all right. We're going to win this anyway. First home match, first game with the club, we end up drawing 0-0. We hit the woodwork 12 times, and all anyone could pick out, everyone, they felt like it was a loss. I couldn't believe it, and I was buzzing because we played really well. But then I learned 3 points is the most 3 points is the most important thing in professional football. Yeah. So for the past 2 weeks, all I was being asked was, why did you choose this striker? And that's the only mistake I made. I chose a striker which is normally a sub. He can hold up play well, but he can't finish. Whereas the normal striker, I left on the bench because I thought he was more of a winger. So in terms of that, I did make a bit of a mistake there.
Yeah, and then with that sort of difference in not really culture, I guess, but I suppose it would be culture between, let's say, for example, Ghana and Asia. I mean, did you see that as, right, well, I've acquired all this knowledge, I've acquired all of this experience. Maybe it's time for me to explore different avenues and try to utilize those experiences that I've had, perhaps in a different setting. Is that why you decided to step away from the coaching space a little bit more?
Yes. So ultimately, I decided to step away from coaching. I wrote a lot about it in my book. I just give it a quick plug: 0 to Pro in 4 years. And basically, it too much off the field shenanigans kind of made me fall out of love with coaching. Yeah. Too much. You can't prove it, but in my eyes, match fixing. Too much interference from owners. You know, in China, we was getting phone calls from the boss, from the owner, saying you have to change a defender. We're 2-0 up away. You have to change a defender, and it's not really an option. So we change the defender, we lose 4-3. It's not a coincidence. And I saw firsthand a lot of things. You know, referees taking minimum of $5,000 up to $25,000 a match, flying 5 hours to a game, knowing that you're going to lose because it's already been set up. And you know, when you're trying to build a reputation or a career as an unknown coach, a win means everything for your family, for your win bonus, for your career. It means everything. So when you're working week in, week out, day in, day out, and it's 24/7, like, you know, you go on match day and it should be played. I know it isn't, just like all sport, but it should be played with all of these things in consideration. But you go to match day where you could have the best training all week or all month, and you're already going to lose. The result is already decided. And regardless of what salary I'm on, I wear my heart on the sleeve, and no, I can't accept it. You know, I want to coach because I want to win. I want to make players better. I want to make players win. And if I'm not allowed to do that, not because we should win or we should lose, but of the third party interference or other things going on, the uncontrollables, then what's the point in coaching?
Yeah.
Literally. What's the point in managing a team? What's the point in being in the league? What's the point in playing in a professional team if it's already fixed? And right now, that's something I can't get back into. It may change later on, but yeah, too much negative experiences in football, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame, isn't it? I mean, even when we were here, there were rumours and murmurs of certain games that you know, incidents happened that were questionable, shall we say?
Yeah.
But I didn't realise it was that prevalent in some of these other places. You know, I guess perhaps you just don't want to acknowledge it because you hope that it's not really the case, because you don't want to have your game that you love to be tainted. But even before, like Suzuki Cup and Asian Cup, it was a really big thing from the federation that people came in and spoke to us about match fixing and spoke to us about the importance of if people are approaching you, that you have to report it and all those kinds of things. Hand on heart, I've never been approached to fix a game, but I know that there have been players who have been approached, and it's really, really important that is stamped out and eliminated. And while especially in countries like China, for example, where betting is such a huge part of
that's the thing
of the culture, you know what I mean, and that's why there's when some of the statistics that the guys were talking about, how much money each game, how much money is riding on each game, the amount of betting that's conducted on each game, and it's not even the games that you would think, it's not the Barcelona Real Madrid games, it's not, it's literally like a Macedonian third division game, or Icelandic Premier League. These are the types of games that people are betting ridiculous sums of money on. And it's certainly opened my eyes. Before Suzuki Cup, before the last Asian Cup, it was a real thing that they were trying to stamp out, which is good, because there is no place for it in this game, because we all want to play on a level playing field, don't we?
No. Of course, that's what the players, the coaches, and the clubs what spend money deserve. But whether it's my naivety, Philippines, you look at it and you think, the referees are just uneducated and terrible, which some people may assume of different countries. But when I look back at it, you just never know. You just never know. And it could be put down to bad officiating, but also something which is really, really, really bad decisions. You never know. And on the player aspect, interesting, you should say that, Chris. What normally happens, and it happens a lot in Thailand, Steve Darby, who's got a coach with huge knowledge of Asia. He basically, he's had players explain how it works, and what they do, they trap you. So they offer a player, let's say, I don't know, $5,000. So you accept the $5,000, and once you've taken it, then the fixers start lowering the price, because they know that they've trapped you. So then it'll go down to $200.
Right.
And then if you don't agree, then they've got all the information on your family, the school where where your kids go and everything. You're trapped, and you're no longer getting paid $5,000 to do it. Not that you should do it, but you're getting paid $200. And these players are, they're not wealthy anyway, and they've got nowhere to turn. And then when it comes down to being banned, it's the players what get banned and not the fixers, because they're linked in with somewhere down the line, high up, some authority figure high up in the governance of the game, which is sickening.
It's one of the things that stood out when I did the presentation, when we were given the presentation by the AFF, was how impactful it is when people are caught. They were given examples in I think it was a club in Myanmar, how it completely destroyed the whole community. It wasn't just the individual, obviously, who took the money. It was the coach who then had to lose his job because the games were being fixed. It was then the points deduction that the club had, so other people from around that club then lost their jobs, and then how it impacted on the entire community. All I remember on the slide was this depiction of a stadium that was completely derelict, weeds growing through it and all sorts, and that was traditionally the hub of the community, because obviously on the weekend or whatever, everyone would congregate on the stadium, watch their people playing a game, support the team fanatically, and then hopefully they represent the people really well. And it's just a real shame, because that it has a real impact on the community, not just the footballers, which is a shame. Of course. Well, this wasn't an avenue that I was looking to go down with you. By the way, but
no.
I think it's really interesting. It's really interesting. It's a topic we haven't. Right? we haven't really discussed this, and I think it's important, because even myself sometimes, maybe I think I'm a little bit naive to it. But if you're someone who feels deep down that it's you've been involved in games where you feel as though that there's been some underhand tactics, that I can see how that would be demoralizing, and I can see how that would have a real effect on anyone's coaching, because like you said, you prepare all week, or you prepare all season to try to get your team in the best possible position to be successful. And if you think that there are figures outside of that conspiring against you, I can see how that would be really, really difficult to handle and to process.
I mean, just to finish off on this, an example is you get a win bonus. Now, for one of the teams, I won't mention which one, we used to get a win bonus, and if we won 3 matches in a row, it'll be a rollover. You get a triple win bonus, which was at the time a hell of a lot of money. Now, on 3 separate occasions, we always lost that 3rd game in a row. Even against teams where we are the better team, we controlled the game, we would have things like a man sent off or a couple of penalties awarded against us. So then this started getting me thinking, if you do the math, if someone wanted to save money or not pay out as much, you would potentially, I'm not saying it happened, but you could potentially buy the game for your club to lose instead of paying out all the players and staff a triple win bonus. It makes sense.
Yeah. Wow.
So I never got a triple win bonus.
When
I never got one.
I just think your tactics were rubbish, Matt. You know what I mean? You can't keep blaming it on the triple win bonus. But it's interesting you say that. It's interesting when you say that. Yeah, I mean, these are the sorts of things I think the general football public don't really realise. I mean, even growing up in the UK, it just wasn't something that was really on the radar. So I appreciate you bringing that up and talking quite openly about it, because it's something that doesn't really get spoken about it. No.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Right. Well, I want to try to move into the sort of the more current space with you that you're in right now, which is trying to help and develop coaches reach their potential. And we have a lot of coaches who listen to the show, so I'm sure they'll be intrigued to see like what your sort of take on coaching is, and what things and what steps people need to take in order to get to the next level. I hear you talk a lot about this on your webinars and your little 5-minute videos that you do, which I think are great. I think they're really, really good advice. For any coaches who are looking to progress their careers. But what are sort of some of the key things that you think are really important for coaches who are looking to either get on the ladder or make that next step and that next jump in their coaching career?
So the first thing you need to do as a coach is figure out what you want to do and what coach you want to be. Do you want to work in an academy, potentially to a senior coach, or do you want to be a senior coach and aim high and be a manager of a national team? You need to know yourself what you want to be. Otherwise, you'll end up taking an academy job, and you'll keep saying, I'm just going to coach U9s for another 2 years. Then I want to get into senior football. Well, by the time you've done another 2 years with your U9 academy team, when is the right time to get that experience to get a senior football job? Because for me, example, if I'm going for a job against someone who's doing another 2 years as a U9 coach, I'm going to go out and get experience working with a senior team. It doesn't matter if it's non-league. It doesn't matter if it's amateur. Because when it comes down to relating your experience to the role you're going for, they're going to look and go, okay, you want to be a senior coach. How much experience have you got as a senior coach? 0. But you've coached under 12s. Okay. Now, it's not to say that there's nothing wrong with that, but you've got to, at one point, find out or figure out what you want to do and how you're going to get there. If you're in an academy, but you want to work in senior levels, can you do both? Even if it means doing something for nothing, which goes on to my the second point. Try and give before you take. So there's a lot of coaches which say, oh yeah, I'll coach that women's team. It may be a women's team in the Philippines League. Oh yeah, I'll do that. How much do I get paid? Which is the wrong question. The value is in the experience of being able to coach for the senior women's team, not how much you're going to get paid first and probably not get offered the job. Yeah. So let's switch it on its head. You can say, oh yeah, I want to come and help out. I want to come and coach. I can be an assistant. I'm willing to come across, see how it goes, and then we can take it from there. And that's a better attitude to do it. Because, look, I know everyone needs money. Everyone needs paying. I know. But the value in experience outweighs the quick money. It outweighs a quick dollar. And it really does work. Myself in Taipei, I was a PE teacher for 3 years. I spent 3 weeknights of my time coming back from PE teaching all day, traveling 1 hour for training, putting training on, traveling back 1 hour, getting home past midnight, waking up, doing it again for no money. Basically, I was losing money because if we had to travel away, I'd help fund hotels or transport to try and make everything professional, because I knew that would come back and give me what I deserve from all the effort and for all the giving I've done. And it really does work. So find out what you want to do first, then figure out how you're going to build the pathway to what you want to end up being. Maybe you don't know right away, but as long as you have an idea. Then one of the most important thing is, when you know where you want to be, is how much sacrifice are you willing to make. So I talk about something called a scale of sacrifice, 0 to 10. At the time when I wanted to coach, I'd be a scale of sacrifice level 10, meaning I would do anything to get an opportunity. If a first team club in Afghanistan said, Matt, do you want to come and coach our reserve team? I'd be like, yeah, I'm on the way. It doesn't matter. Yes, rightly or wrongly. And I've already done it. I've left when I was in the Philippines, my wife was pregnant. 4 days before I left China and came back home, we had our son. And I missed all the time my wife being pregnant. Then I was away in Ghana, which I'll be honest, is really, it hurt my marriage. And that's a sacrifice I made for my career, because I was a scale of sacrifice 10. I was willing to do anything to be successful, to get that next job. Now, not everyone can be a 10. Not everyone can be a sacrifice level of 7 or 8. So maybe you're 1 or 2. And that's okay. Not everyone wants to leave a family. Not everyone wants to move to a different country or even a different city. But as long as you're realistic and you understand that the scale of your sacrifice will probably represent the opportunity you'll get at the end. Because someone who's willing to sacrifice more will always end up getting a better opportunity than someone who's not. And even if you're getting a job locally, you still have to sacrifice. As yourself, Chris, it's 24/7. Coaching isn't 2 hours and then you go and play golf, unless you're a ex-professional coaching in India, which they do. But it's full on. It's all day, every day. It's sleepless nights. You're doing it again. And that's sacrifice. Even if you're living with your family, you might not get the quality time with your children, with your husband or wife. So all of these things have to be decided on before you can actually step in and get to work and doing it. Another big one is your networking and contacting. And yeah, I'm quite not opinionated, but I'm quite stubborn. And if I think something's wrong or I disagree, I've learned now to be more flexible, which is helpful. I've burnt a lot of bridges in the past, which now I know was a mistake, obviously having built quite a strong network now. So however bad things get with club, players, bosses, don't burn bridges, because these are potentially your next role, your next opportunity. Always try and leave on good terms when you can. But whilst you're in the role, whatever you're doing, academy role, grassroots role, senior team role, already start working towards your next role, because football can change so quickly. You can be out of a job and you need to be ready with your foot in the next door of the next job, ready to go. And you can only do that by networking the right way, communicating the right way, and giving before you take. I'll give an example of some things what not to do when talking to people or trying to go for jobs. I could have a guy who's never talked to me in their life will email me and say, "Hi, Matt, you got any jobs I can get?" And that's the first conversation we have. Not even a hello, how you doing or anything. Yeah. No interest in what I'm doing whatsoever. And it's straight in with that. And I'm less likely going to help people like that because they haven't built the relationship. They haven't built the communication structure. So as a coach, an aspiring coach, or even a coach in one of the highest positions, you need to keep your communication open and correct in the right way with not only the people what you think can help you, but also those that who may not be able to help you now, but may be able to in the future. Just off the topic, I was in Hong Kong and an Indian waiter came up to me and started talking to me about Bitcoin. Now, if I was dismissive and I said to him, mate, please, I just want to enjoy my beer, I wouldn't listen to him. But I did. I listened to him and I bought some Bitcoin at the right time. So that's the same that's the same principle of basically treating everyone as they are, because you never know what they can offer you. And it comes back to giving more than taking. So, yeah, you got to be flexible. You got to be open. And you've got to be really serious about working hard. And hard work will pay off in the end. You've got to be good at what you do as well. And if you're not everyone's a good coach. I'm not the best coach in the world by a long shot. But if you can work on yourself and you're willing to take feedback and learn from others, then you can improve. So once you can coach, once you can build connections and network, and once you can show that your profile is professional, what I mean by profile is, if you're on LinkedIn as a professional coach, but you're sending photos of your dinner or Starbucks, you're not being a professional coach. So you can build your profile or the perception of being a professional in that industry just by acting professional off the field as well. Social media too. So they're just a few tips which can really help people push on in the careers as well.
Yeah, no, I really like that, Matt. I think I've seen you talk about that on some of your stuff that you put out there, and I think a lot of it's true. Like, I think, you listen to people like Eddie Howe. He would talk about how he's a good football coach, but maybe he's not the best dad. Because he's not always there for his kids. He's not always there. Just he might be there, but he's not present. In that moment when he's at home with his family,
not present.
I don't know if you saw the Bobby Robson documentary, but the same thing. The real sad thing about that documentary is the fact that his son didn't have the opportunity to really have football conversations with his dad because he was too busy talking about it with everyone else. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's these are the sorts of things that I said in Macca's podcast that I had with him. The amount of people that are divorced or have, multiple marriages who are football coaches because they're going here, there, and everywhere. It takes its toll. It takes its effect. And even my wife and I had this discussion the other day. She was like, "Oh, if you had to choose between football and me, what would you choose?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. We'll have to have a chat about that next time."
Start off with an easy question. Why don't you?
It's tough, but. No, but these are the things that I think are really, really important on people who want to go out on this journey.
What did you say to that?
You know what? In the end, I think she said, "You know what? I don't want to know that answer." Or she said something along the lines of, "I think I know the answer," so I didn't actually have to answer it. So I kind of got away with that one. But yeah, it's really. I think it's difficult when you're embarking on your journey.
That worked out good.
It worked out all right. Yeah. I think it's difficult when you're embarking on the journey because I totally agree. I think too many people are looking to get the job. I want to get the job straight away. And it takes time. It takes time. And even if you don't take those necessary steps, even if you do, for whatever reason, luck out and you get the job that you want early in your career, you haven't taken the steps and the measures to make those silly mistakes that you make. Like you said, to get too close to the players, to know how to manage up, to know what it's like to deal with dodgy officiating. And you're going to be under the microscope at a very high level, and you're going to have to make these really big decisions when you're not prepared to do it. And I think that's really, really undervalued in a coach's sort of transition and coach's journey, that people don't take that seriously enough. I'm a huge believer in going out there and doing those types of things like volunteer coaching. Again, with Macca, I talked about how when I went to America, I would coach kinder soccer. I'd be coaching 3-year-olds, running around playing cops and robbers and all this sort of stuff. But it's always teaching you how to interact with people, irrespective of the level that you're coaching at. It's experience. Like I would say to any coach, and I know you said this, on your network. If you're a coach right now who's sitting at home and you're thinking, well, I want to go and coach at a really high level academy, but I've got no experience, but I want to do it. Go out to America, go get a job, go work the camps, come out to Asia. If there's anyone listening, you want to come out and coach in Asia, come out to Asia, come and coach for my academy. I won't pay you.
Get it.
I won't pay you.
Yeah.
But you will work in a great setting, in a great environment. You have the opportunity to coach every single day and really, really learn your trade. Not in the spotlight, not under the microscope, where you can make mistakes, you can learn how to interact with parents, you can coach at different levels, and you will sharpen that knife quicker than anything if you were back home doing 1 session a week, 2 sessions a week at a grassroots level. I look back and one of my coaches who I know is coaching in America now, we talk about coaching years. When I was in America, we would coach 3 to 4 hours every weekday. So Monday to Friday. And then Saturday, Sundays, I would do probably 6 hours a day easily on a weekend. And when you times that, so we wouldn't have any holidays. We coach all the way through. So I'd be doing that probably 45, 46 weeks of the year. Right. So when I compare to someone who's like, I've got 10 years coaching experience, but you coach twice a week.
Yeah.
Right. You coach twice a week. The difference is incredible. Like I've acquired so many more coaching hours than you, even though I've coached for a shorter period of time. So I think that for any coach who's sort of on that ladder looking to progress their career, it's really, really important that you get those coaching hours in and look at it exactly as you said from that sacrifice standpoint. If you're a young coach, especially, can you sacrifice everything now? Can you sacrifice everything now in order to get that job that you really want, that you dream of, maybe in 2, 3, 4 years time when you're really ready? Don't be sat at home thinking, oh, I want to be coaching at a Premier League club. I want to be coaching at this level if you haven't paid your dues, because all that's going to happen is you're going to get that opportunity and you're not going to be ready for it, if ever. So, no, I totally agree with Matt. And I think if anyone's listening, that's great advice for any coach who's aspiring to coach at any particular level. So I appreciate that. You've got your network. Up and running.
Yeah,
and I'm sure people are probably gonna want to network and people are gonna want to speak to you.
Just going back to
go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
Yeah, spot on, Chris. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just saying. So, just touching on the kind of building relationships as well. That one of the main reasons why I got the China job, because the head coach who went across to China, I helped him out when he was the Guam national team manager. He came over to Taiwan for a tournament and couldn't get hold of a load of equipment. So I went out my way, spent my own money and used my own time to help them. And also I did all the analysis for them for the tournament for free, never asked for anything in return. And he kept me in mind for when he needed someone for another assistant coach. And he gave me a call at 3 a.m. in the morning and said, look, do you want to come to China? And I was like, yeah, I do. So that's another example of why communication and keeping good relations is so important as well.
Yeah, massively. I think that's great advice for anyone out there. I've been guilty of it in the past. Struggling to perhaps bite my tongue in certain situations, but invariably those things come back around, don't they? And I think you have to try to maintain those relationships while managing to keep a level of authenticity. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't want to be a walkover, a pushover, or stand your ground on issues that you think are important. I think it's just about trying to find that balance, and the only way you're going to find out where that balance is by getting the experience, right? That's really where it's at. If you don't go out there and experience these types of scenarios and situations, then you're never going to know how to play those when presented with it down the line. Yeah. So no, I think that's really insightful, Matt. So thanks for enlightening us on some of those things that you talk about a lot on your network. But if people want to reach out to you, Matt, I want to be mindful of your time, but if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way if they have any questions, if people are embarking on their own coaching journeys, if they have any questions on how to get started? I know you're really generous with your time when it comes to things like this. Like what would be the best way to kind of get hold of you?
They can fire across an email to me at matt@britishfootballcoaches.com. That's matt@britishfootballcoaches.com. And I'm really busy, but I always try and reply to everyone as much as possible, unless they come and go, Matt, have you got a job for me? And then I won't. But I'll always try and do my best. No, it's not. Have you got a job? It's gives a job. Matt gives a job. Yeah, all right. And also feel free to follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn, where I normally put some short videos from my YouTube channel as well. Without sounding like a bit of a pleb, but if you just Google Matt Ward coaching, or Coach Matt Ward, or Matt Ward China football, it'll come up with all the avenues that I can be reached on. So please feel free. It'll be awesome to hear from coaches, because I love that.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Matt. Like I really appreciate all of the the advice that you've given us. You've given us some great stories on your experiences both in Asia and in Africa. And I think for any young coaches that are out there that are interested in making a career in football, it's not all glitz and glamour. And you've illustrated that and talking about some of the dark side of the game, which I think is important, that when coaches go into this, they understand what they're getting themselves into, and they go in it with their eyes wide open and fully aware of some of the pitfalls and the difficulties that they might encounter. We haven't gone through all of them, but some of the ones there that you've discussed are things that you wouldn't necessarily normally think about. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. It's been a real pleasure. Any final thoughts from you, Matt? Anything else that I didn't ask you that you wish I'd asked, or anything?
No
like
problem at all, Chris. Thank you for having me. No. It's all good. But I do wish, my one wish, because I'm still fond of the Philippines and the players and the people involved, and I do wish that they just get their act sorted out. Get more teams, but actually give them a fairer chance. Because otherwise, a league of 4 teams or 2 competitive teams, and there's so much good talent what can be produced, which needs to start feeding into the national team as soon as possible. Because once these main players, just like with your era, Chris, once they stop playing, you're going to start running out of players. It needs to start feeding through as soon as possible, and you can only do that with committed people. So I hope that can improve soon.
That's brilliant, Matt. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
No
for those
problem,
of you who like the content that we put out, please make sure that you subscribe to us, like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on the YouTube channel, check us out on the Instagram page as well. But yeah, thanks so much, Matt. We really appreciate it. Take care, and hopefully we'll see some more of your really exciting posts on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter in the very near future.
Cheers, Chris.